In 1937, a minor clash near Beijing quickly spirals into a full-scale war between China and Japan. Neither side realizes it yet, but this confrontation ignites the Second Sino-Japanese War. With powers like Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union involved in the background, the conflict also sets the stage for a far greater struggle, World War II in Asia. It's July 7, 1937, near the Marco Polo Bridge outside Beijing. Japanese troops stationed in the area are conducting a night exercise. As unwelcome occupiers on Chinese soil, they must remain alert. This time, however, they fail to inform the nearby Chinese garrison of their maneuvers, and the Chinese open fire. The skirmish at the Marco Polo Bridge, known in China as Luguqiao, triggers a powder keg that had been smoldering for years. Since the end of the Boxer Rebellion nearly 4 decades earlier, Japanese and other foreign forces had maintained garrisons in China. But unlike the others, Japan sought far more than commercial gain. It had already seized Manchuria in 1931, taken Reihe Province in 1932, and made no secret of its ambition to dominate a divided China. After the first shots on July 7th, a Japanese soldier went missing. Although he was soon found, local commander Colonel Renya Mutaguchi ordered artillery fire on Chinese positions. Japan demanded a Chinese withdrawal, but the Chinese refused. Determined to enforce its will, the Japanese army poured reinforcements into the area, referring to the clash as the North China Incident, later simply the China Incident. Within China, leaders were uncertain how to respond. Chiang Kai-shek had nominally unified the country in 1928, but his nationalist government was riven by ideological divisions, and many provinces were still controlled by regional warlords. The nationalists faced a formidable enemy with a stronger state and military. Advisor Xu Yongchang urged restraint. If one can bear it, it would be best to endure Japan. Because if a major war breaks out, regardless of outside intervention, both sides will lose. Payne 129. Chiang, however, was deeply concerned. He had previously prioritized defeating the Chinese communists before confronting Japan, but now saw the struggle against Japan as existential. Unlike 1931, this time China would resist and seek international aid. Meanwhile, Japan's leadership debated their next move. Hardliners like General Matsui Iwane pushed for a total assault on a China they viewed as a Western puppet that must return under Japanese influence. The first point is to make the Chinese abandon dependence on Europe and America. The second is to make them realize that Japanese troops are China's true friends, sacrificing themselves to rescue 400 million Chinese. Mitter 122. War Minister Sugiyama Hajime even assured Emperor Hirohito the campaign would be finished within a month, while moderates such as General Ishiwara were ignored. Tokyo dispatched negotiators to Nanjing, but the army arrested them before arrival, a clear sign that Japan's military no longer answered fully to civilian control. The government warned Chiang that if he resisted, his own regime would be the target. Japan had the strength to back up its threats. In 1937, its army fielded about 950,000 men, with 600,000 deployed to China. Its navy and air force were far superior, backed by more tanks, artillery, and better-trained troops. China's forces, by contrast, were fragmented. Out of 1.8 million troops, only about 300,000 were trained and directly loyal to Chiang. The rest belonged to regional warlords and militias of uncertain loyalty. Around 50,000 communist troops under Mao Zedong had joined the nationalists after years of civil war. Their equipment came from an assortment of sources, with the best weapons supplied by Germany and the Soviet Union. Berlin sought Chinese resources and hoped to draw both China and Japan into its anti-Comintern alliance, while Moscow backed China to prevent a joint Japanese-German threat. The USSR sent 450 airmen and supplied 20 Chinese divisions in 1937 alone. Analysts estimated a Japanese division had 3 to 12 times the combat strength of its Chinese counterpart. On July 27th, Japan launched a full offensive in northern China. With limited forces and vast ground to cover, they advanced along railway lines toward Zhengzhou, Nanjing, and through Chahar Province, brushing aside weak resistance from poorly organized Chinese units. Beijing fell on July 28th. Better-equipped nationalist forces fought delaying actions, while at Pingxing-Guan, Lin Biao's communist troops struck the Japanese rear, a rare Red Army success before 1940. Ignoring Tokyo's orders to halt, General Hisaichi Terauchi pushed deeper south. Between September and December, Japanese troops seized the provincial capitals of Jili, Hebei, Shaanxi, Zhejiang, and Shandong. While Japan pressed its advantage in the north, Chiang made a bold choice. He opened a new front around Shanghai, China's most vital economic hub and international port. Expanding the war to Shanghai and the Yangtze Delta offered several benefits. It would divert Japanese troops from the north, shield key resource routes and Soviet supply lines, and draw the enemy into a costly urban battle. It would also bring the conflict closer to Western interests, potentially prompting foreign intervention. In a radio appeal to the United States, Chiang's wife, Song Meiling, pleaded for aid. If the whole Occidental world is indifferent to this and abandons its treaties, we in China, who have labored for years under the stigma of cowards, will do our best. Mitter 97. Chiang deployed his finest German-trained divisions to defend the city. The Japanese, for their part, had already been preparing for a showdown at Shanghai. Japan already had a garrison stationed in the city and several warships anchored nearby. When clashes erupted on August 13th, Japanese naval guns opened fire on Chinese positions. Both sides quickly poured in reinforcements, and soon tens of thousands of civilians fled toward what they believed to be the safety of the international settlements. In response, Chinese bombers attempted to strike the Japanese cruiser Izuma, but accidentally dropped their bombs over the international settlement, killing over 1,000 civilians and foreigners in an event that became known as Black Saturday. A journalist described the horrific aftermath. Flames from a burning car danced over twisted bodies. In shapeless piles where people had sought shelter, corpses in blood-soaked rags lay in doorways and arcades of the palace and Cathay hotels. Severed hands, arms, and legs lay scattered far from the mangled remains. A Chinese policeman, struck dead in his tracks as he directed traffic, had shrapnel through his skull. Mitter 94. On August 17th, Chinese troops assaulted the Japanese garrison but failed to dislodge it. When fresh Japanese reinforcements arrived, they began pushing the Chinese back in brutal house-to-house combat. As fighting intensified, the war escalated beyond Shanghai. Japanese aircraft bombed Chinese cities in a terror campaign that killed thousands, and their navy blockaded China's coastline. Emperor Hirohito asked his advisors how the conflict could be contained, but the military insisted on victory through force, marginalizing more moderate politicians. The Chinese government issued a general war directive, mobilizing the entire national army, a move many historians mark as the point of no return. In Shanghai, the grueling urban battle dragged on through September, October, and November. The Japanese unleashed every weapon at their disposal, including poison gas, and launched an amphibious landing south of the city at Hangzhou Bay to seize key approaches. Chinese forces fought desperately along the city's waterways, but most counterattacks failed. Under pressure to take Shanghai before international mediation, the Japanese conducted costly frontal assaults on entrenched Chinese positions. Despite heavy losses, they succeeded, and by November the last southern districts had fallen. The resistance shocked many Japanese soldiers. We viewed China as a dog. It now emerges as a wolf. Frank 34. Chiang Kai-shek later admitted his mistakes at Hangzhou and his failure to retreat from Shanghai sooner. Roughly 750,000 Chinese and 250,000 Japanese troops took part, making Shanghai one of the largest battles of the Second World War before Stalingrad. Chinese losses ranged between 187,000 and 250,000 killed or wounded, including 70% of their best officers, while Japan suffered 40,000 to 100,000 casualties. The struggle brought diplomatic gains. In August, China and the USSR signed a non-aggression pact, paving the way for more Soviet aid. It also helped unify the country. Many warlords rallied to Chiang's cause, and public opinion hardened against Japan. Embodied in slogans like "China cannot be lost" and the patriotic song March of the Volunteers, which later became China's national anthem. The conflict came to be known as the War of Resistance. Although Japan captured Shanghai, the campaign devolved into the drawn-out war China had hoped to force. Still, some nationalists feared disaster. Politician Zhou Fohai lamented, "This day marks the beginning of my new life. I am utterly pessimistic. China will have no more history. Why should I keep my diary anymore?" Mitter 100. Defeated Chinese units retreated westward, and Chiang dismissed several generals he deemed cowardly. After victories in the north and at Shanghai, Japan's commanders debated whether to pause or strike deeper into China. Their choice led to one of the darkest chapters of the war. Hardliners prevailed, and the High Command merged the 10th and Shanghai armies into the Central China Field Army under General Matsui Iwane. His mission, advance on Nanjing, encircle Chiang's remaining forces, and win a decisive blow to end the war. In November, Chiang relocated his headquarters to Wuhan and designated Chongqing as the new capital, beyond Japan's reach. Yet Nanjing remained a vital communication hub and a symbol of nationalist pride. During the preceding Nanjing decade, it had embodied China's modern aspirations: broad avenues, grand architecture, and government buildings surrounding Sun Yat-sen's mausoleum. Chiang's German advisor, Alexander von Falkenhausen, and Foreign Minister Wang Shijie urged him not to defend the city. His army was weakened after Shanghai, and Nanjing was surrounded on three sides by the Yangtze River, a natural trap. But political pressure from nationalist leaders and warlords compelled him to fight. He wanted to prove China's resolve and appeal to foreign powers for aid. German ambassador to Japan, Oskar Trautmann, attempted to broker peace, but Tokyo refused to negotiate. Stalin also declined intervention, unless the Western powers acted first, but they did not. Still, Chiang pressed on. "We must defend Nanjing." Within a month, the international situation may change dramatically. China may yet avoid catastrophe. Frank 42. General Matsui had initially planned to bypass Nanjing, but reports of weak defenses convinced him to attack. On December 5th, roughly 200,000 Japanese troops advanced toward the city. Defending Nanjing were about 75,000 Chinese soldiers under General Tang Shengji, though only around 20,000 were adequately trained. Many lacked proper equipment, some without even shoes, and poorly armed regional troops fled the front. A handful of German-trained units fought with Panzerés and German armored cars, but these vehicles were ill-suited to China's terrain and climate. They took part in Nanjing's urban combat before being damaged and abandoned. In brutal fighting, the Japanese advanced steadily. The outer Chinese defensive ring collapsed on December 8th. The same day, Chiang Kai-shek fled the city. 2 days later, the Japanese captured the inner line of defenses. As the Chinese retreated, they burned everything they could in a scorched earth effort, while the advancing Japanese looted and plundered the ruins. General Matsui offered surrender terms, but the Chinese refused. On December 12th, Japanese forces stormed the city walls and entered Nanjing. General Tang Shengji then ordered an unauthorized retreat and fled the following day. The city descended into panic. Disorganized Chinese troops tried to cross the Yangtze River alongside terrified civilians, leading to chaos and deadly stampedes at the crossings. Thousands of people sought safety in the international safe zone, established by Western residents. Among them was John Rabe, a German businessman and member of the Nazi Party, who desperately hoped for support from Berlin. "The Führer won't leave me in the lurch." Frank 43. Meanwhile, the U.S. military began evacuating American personnel from the city. Aboard the gunboat USS Panay, more than 70 people, including diplomats, sailors, and refugees, traveled upriver, accompanied by 3 standard oil tankers carrying evacuees. On December 12th, Japanese aircraft bombed and strafed all 4 vessels and their lifeboats. 2 U.S. Navy sailors, 2 Western civilians, and several Chinese refugees were killed. The Panay was clearly marked as an American ship. Yet war was narrowly avoided when Tokyo issued a formal apology and paid over $2 million in indemnities. Following their victory, Japanese troops turned to looting, burning, and killing in what became known as the Massacre of Nanjing, or the Rape of Nanjing. Many Chinese soldiers discarded their uniforms, as had been common in previous warlord conflicts, causing the Japanese to regard any male as a potential combatant. Units carried out systematic executions and atrocities, many witnessed by foreign journalists and residents. One Japanese soldier recorded his actions in a chilling diary entry. "I figured I'd never get another chance like this, so I stabbed 30 of the damned Chinese. Standing atop a mountain of corpses, I felt like a true devil slayer, stabbing again and again with all my strength." The Chinese groaned. "There were old people and children too, but we killed them all. I even borrowed a friend's sword to try beheading some. I've never experienced anything like it." Frank 52. Japanese troops also unleashed widespread sexual violence, mostly against women, but also teenage boys. The headmistress of a girls' college within the safe zone estimated that around 1,000 women were raped each night. Survivor Chung Ruifang described the horror. "More women came to the college because Japanese soldiers were coming in broad daylight to rob and rape. In the streets, many people have been bayoneted to death, even inside the safety zone. Outside, even more have been killed. No one dares to go out." Mitter 129. Estimates of the massacre's scale vary, between 5,000 and 20,000 rapes, and between 100,000 and 300,000 killings. Several factors fueled this savagery. The Japanese army had officially abandoned the conventional laws of war in July 1937. Its soldiers were conditioned by violent, dehumanizing training. They were enraged by unexpectedly fierce Chinese resistance, and Japanese ideology taught racial superiority over a China deemed unworthy of sovereignty. Staff Officer Ryukichi Tanaka explained bluntly, "To be perfectly frank, the way you and I look at the Chinese is entirely different. You seem to think of them as human, but I see them as pigs." Frank 58. By the end of 1937, the Second Sino-Japanese War had devastated China. Hundreds of thousands lay dead, and between 80 and 100 million people were displaced. Japan now controlled much of northern and eastern China. Although no foreign power had yet intervened directly, Britain and the United States were inching closer to aiding the Chinese, while the Soviet Union replaced Nazi Germany as China's primary supplier of heavy weapons, as Berlin prioritized ties with Tokyo. The framework of World War II in Asia was now visible. As historian Rana Mitter observed, China was the first Allied power to fight the Axis, New York Times. But by this point, Japan had clearly taken on more than it could handle. Its armies had achieved impressive victories on the battlefield, yet the Chinese refused to surrender and remained determined to fight as a united nation. Japan simply lacked the manpower to garrison the vast territories it had conquered, and its control rarely extended beyond major cities and railway lines. The occupied regions were ravaged, offering little economic value, while Tokyo was now spending nearly 90% of its entire budget on the war effort. That's why, in January 1938, senior Japanese commanders gathered in Tokyo, and their solution was not restraint, but an even greater escalation of the war in China and beyond. The Second Sino-Japanese War and the wider conflict in Asia would only come to an end in 1945, with Japan's surrender following the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Afterward, the fragile alliance between the CCP and KMT collapsed once again, and the world entered the Cold War and a new nuclear arms race. Stalin, in particular, pushed forward the Soviet nuclear program to realize his vision of nuclear-powered communism and develop atomic weapons. If you'd like to learn more about that story, our new series Red Atoms explores the origins of the Soviet atom bomb, from its early development all the way to the Chernobyl disaster and beyond. You can watch Red Atoms on Nebula, the streaming platform we've built alongside other creators. A place where we don't have to worry about algorithms or advertisers, and where viewers support us directly. That direct support allows us to make projects like Red Atoms and our WW2 series 16 Days in Berlin and Rhineland 45. And it's not just us. You'll find other Nebula originals there too. For instance, check out Polymatter's China, actually series for a modern look at China. Sign up at Nebula TV Real-Time History to get 40% off an annual subscription and support our channel at the same time. For just $30 a year, you can watch all our content ad-free, early, and explore a growing library of Nebula originals and classes. That's Nebula.tv Real-Time History for 40% off and a direct way to help us continue making videos like this one. We hope you enjoyed this episode about the dramatic first year of the Second Sino-Japanese War and World War II in Asia. This is part of an ongoing series, so stay tuned. The next episode will take us all the way to Pearl Harbor. You can find all our sources in the description below. If you're watching this on Nebula or Patreon, thank you so much for your support. We couldn't do it without you. I'm Jesse Alexander, and this is a production of Real-Time History, the only history channel that knows if you underestimate your neighbor's resolve and invade them, you're going to have a bad time. Panyal?